Hi everyone, welcome back. This talk is an adapted version of a presentation I made at the Australian National Maritime Museum recently that was celebrating the 150th anniversary of Holland America Line, as well as the publication of the epic 5-volume book set that documents the history of this company in unrivaled detail. In my hands is Volume 1. Volume 1 and 2 are now published, and there is a link down below for those of you who may be interested in adding them to your library. This mini-ship history is going to cover the 1973 Prinsendam, or as I like to refer to it as the Fiery Little One. This 8,500 ton expedition cruise ship was built in 1973 to what were then considered the highest safety standards. Holland America Line executives recognized that cruising was the way of the future for passenger shipping, and so they decided to dip their toes and have a specially commissioned ship that would be a full-time cruise vessel. And so the result was this, the Prinsendam, a very functional, geometric, almost built by Lego looking vessel. It does lack the shear line and the curves of the New Amsterdam, but it does have a certain charm to it. The original plan was that this ship would be sent to Indonesia and do expedition cruises out there. Those cruises were relatively successful, but they were not the sellout that the executives had hoped for. So to better utilize this ship, they decided to send the ship over to Alaska. In the early 1970s, Holland America Line had bought shares in a company called West Tours. West Tours was the premier tourist operator in Alaska. They had hotels, buses, trains, and 2 antiquated floating rust buckets that they politely referred to as cruise ships. So Holland America was at least initially able to handle the cruise side of things. This decision was a beneficial one. Not only was the Alaskan cruises well attended, but numbers grew and grew and grew. And as we will see later on, Alaska did not just grow, but would become one of the key destinations of Holland America Line. And quite frankly, to this day, it remains a signature destination. Up until October 1980, this was the Prinsendam's routine. Half its time would be spent in Alaska and the other half in more tropical climates. On the 4th of October 1980, a fuel pipe burst and hot diesel entered the engine room and started a fire. The crew initiated the proper fire prevention procedures. The engine room was blocked out, it was flooded with CO2, but for various reasons the fire was not completely put out, and it gradually spread. The following day, all passengers were evacuated, and what was initiated in Alaska was, at the time, the largest evacuation of passengers and crew by helicopters. This was safely accomplished, with passengers and crew being evacuated off this ship and rescued by the helicopters. Several days later, the ship was still afloat and the fire had largely died down. Some crew members and Coast Guardsmen went on board to try to have the ship towed back, but unfortunately the damage was too great, and the Prinsendam sadly rolled over and sank. And you've probably been seeing, there's a few photos up there showing the progress of the fire, the damage, and its final moments before the ship rolled over and went down. Now, while the Prinsendam was unfortunately lost, its loss did not affect the fortunes of Holland America Line. In fact, the following year, they had generated a profit, and the ship that they had used to replace the Prinsendam, the 1950-built Statendam, which was more than double the capacity of the Prinsendam, ended up being booked out in Alaska. And for the following years onwards, bookings in Alaska would grow and grow and grow. So the sinking of this ship did not affect the fortunes of Holland America Line, although it did force a debate about how safety standards should be implemented, particularly with smoke detectors. Should they detect not just heat, but smoke as well? The loss being only 7 years, there isn't too much out there about this ship. However, there are 2 books. There is this one, Burning Cold by Paul Jeffers, which is an overall look at mainly the passengers' experience on board the Prinsendaam and the evacuation and the attempts of the Coast Guard to save everyone, but also try to salvage the ship. And then there is also this one, The Prinsendaam Disaster, an officer's account by one of the officers on board at the time. Again, both books I will review at a later date, but what I will say is, depending on what you would like in your books, Paul Jeffers' book focuses more on passenger accounts and experiences, whereas this one offers both a extensive photographic history of the birth, life and death of the Prinsendaam, as well as attempting to set the story straight regarding the circumstances of its loss. Personally, between the 2 of these books, I much prefer this one. However, further down the track, I will provide a review of both. I hope you're enjoying these mini ship histories. Please let me know in the comments below if you'd like me to feature any other ships, particularly those that aren't very well known. And stay tuned because there are some more mini ship histories of Holland America Line coming up.